Messi. Messi. Oh, my goodness. Balotelli. Aguero. Oh, that is extraordinary. What a head, son. What a head. Back of the net.
Hello, and welcome to the Not a Pundit podcast. No matter where they take us, we'll find our own way back. Yes, it is a slightly later than usual podcast this week. You can blame Boyzone. I had a bit of work to do. I was on the red carpet, chatting to the boys. They send their apologies, of course. Go watch their new doc. There you go, lads, if yous are listening. I'm Gillian Ginnity, and I'm delighted to be joined as ever by Connor Glennon. Obviously, the later than usual record and release of this episode meant that we don't have Nate this week. But Connor, Newcastle, how are you doing?
I mean, we've been on a great run of form of late. We had one loss there that was kind of out of our nature, and I suppose these things can get overhyped very quickly off the back of that. I think everyone was like, "Oh, the jig is up, it's over." But I think the one thing that any Newcastle fan can admit, or at least should admit, is that we're becoming heavily reliant upon 25-year-old Alexander Isak. Don't get me wrong, Eddie Howe's brought some incredible football to that team, and he's really bringing along a lot of those players. But I don't know about you, but it's really getting to a point where we're one injury away from our entire season flipping on its head.
Yeah, I think any fantasy football player knows how important Isak has become for Newcastle. Yeah, like for a team of your user size, and I know it's kind of the cheap thing to say, but of your resources, it's a little bit crazy to see you become so reliant on one player. Now, I know it's not just him. Bruno is playing well, and like other things are happening to allow Isak to be good, but it kind of reminds me of a couple of years ago when you were first starting to get a little bit of form again, and you splashed out for Callum Wilson, and it was like, when Wilson's doing good, we'll do fine. But it's just at the other end of the Premier League, but it's the same situations you've caught yourselves in, and where Wilson had injuries, I think Isak has a higher ceiling, and I think yous are going to really struggle this summer if, like, I know we always go harp on about money, but like if PSR was coming in, and is it better to go and sell Isak for 80, 90, maybe 100 million and get two not as good, but potentially very good in maybe a year or two's time players than trying to bank on him and still lose him later on, or maybe he just loses form? Like, it's a very tough one for you when you already have question marks over your manager long term.
Well, that's the bigger issue, is that if you're Isak, you don't know what project you're buying into. You know, in terms of, he seems very happy under Howe, but no one knows how long Howe will be there. If the Premier League's anything to go by, he won't be there very long. You know, I think this isn't new for Newcastle. You know, you mentioned Wilson there, obviously dependent on him for a stage. You go back Demba Ba, Papi Cisse, dependent on them. You go even further back, kind of to yesteryear, if we're calling it that, with Alan Shearer, dependent on him. You know, like we've
What
always
about Peter Lovenkrands?
God. we've always been like, look, every team is dependent on the strikers within their team. It's like American football. You know, the football is the program. But I think Newcastle have always been in a position where we're even more reliant because the resources that are available to us in other positions aren't as good as other teams. So yeah, I do see the merit in potentially leveraging his worth at this point and trying to stabilize the team a bit better. I think we're in a troubling place from a PSR perspective if, you know, we just offloaded Miggy Almiron for £12 million, which, if
Good going.
it's good to get 12 million from him. Like, he was a great player. He was a great servant of the club, and his time had kind of come to go. The only thing with that kind of gives me anxiety as a fan from that perspective is if we're that deeply trying to sort the books out, that 12 million quid is something that we need to do. We've got bigger problems on the go. You know, the only other potential outgoings that I've heard rumblings of are Sean Longstaff, who, yes, he'll be an academy player, so he'll be 100% PSR related, but I would struggle to see getting 10 million for him. Um,
You'd be doing well to
yeah,
get
like
that high.
I
Like
think it's
7,
yeah,
8,
you
and
know.
you're being a lot more realistic, and
But
maybe
then,
with
but then
pauses.
again, we've lost two players. If that happens, Newcastle have lost two players who were well liked in the team locally, as in the community as well. Also, just from a kind of glue guy vibes perspective, and we've only got 20 million in the door. So, and it kind of long story short with the Isak thing, the offer would have to be north of 100 million pounds. I don't know many clubs that are able to do that at this point.
I don't know if you can afford to hold out for that level of money. Like when you look how razor thin your front line is, it's Isak, it's Wilson, and don't you have some young lad as well,
Whose name I
uh,
cannot pronounce. Yes, we do.
Osula or something?
Yeah, like
Um, like you have a stacked defense. You have a well built defense. One or two maybe slightly weaker players, but they're still performing. Shar being an example. Center midfield is absolutely the way you'd want it to
yeah,
be. Joe Linton, Tonali,
Gordon out in the wing. Like our midfield, like you know, one
Barnes is even a decent. Like you
when he
want
wants
to
to
be
be.
relying on him. You
Yeah,
want to rely on him, but having him in the mix is absolutely fine.
one
You
thing I
maybe
never thought
want
I'd
a
hear with a Newcastle team. And sorry to cut across you. It's just on this midfield point when, like, you know, I've heard on multiple kind of podcasts, Match of the Days, Sky Sports, you name it. I've never heard so many people talk about a Newcastle midfield of players that could walk into multiple teams. Not any team, I won't go that far, but like we have never been in a position that our midfield is as strong as it is. We are lock solid in there. Nothing needs to change. Just keep everyone fit. But yeah, up top we have issues, which sounds
and
insane because we're doing so well. But you strip that back, couple of injuries, you can have as good midfield as you want. They're not scoring. They're not scoring 9 out of 9. You know.
no, and like especially at the stage of where your project is meant to be, um, like you'd nearly want, or you'd nearly want to either change your expectations or have Isak playing like this a year or two ago. Because like if you were getting to this stage with a player where Isak was a year or two ago, that kind of like we're starting to challenge properly for Champions League places and having a player that is good and we know is going to be great, well, then we're going to kick on and be potential in the mix for a top 3, top 2 position within the year. But with Isak now, I don't know if you can. You can't afford to lose him because where the project is now, and you just can't afford to not sell him for a reasonable amount of money because you just need to be able to replace him. Like
It has to
he,
be. It has to be north of 100 million if he's to go. We cannot accept underneath that.
but I don't know if you can afford not to because like how else can you replace him? Like it's not like you have the money because of PSO and other rules without either losing another key player or selling a lot of the depth that you have. You're not in a financial position, ironically, considering the vast wealth of your owners, unless they come along and are able to cook the books with the Man City ruling and,
But I don't even
and
want like
sponsorships.
I'd rather be hamstrung financially as we are than start doing the financial fuckery because you know you will get found out
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah, and like with the PSR thing, so like even so like to sell him and make money that you can use, it has to be north of 100 million. But with the so few teams that can do that, and with him potentially becoming unsettled and forcing a move through after, can you afford to wait that long? Despite the fact, like, if you sell him for 90, what, you get 25 million extra to spend? Like,
It
it's a
it
very
it,
hard position to be in.
it hinges on him because he is never going to come out and push a move. He doesn't seem to be that kind of guy. I think he's also aware of the like a. He's so young. He doesn't know if this is his level for the rest of his career or this he's having a Chris Wood couple of years. You know, so I wouldn't
He's
fault
not
him.
that young.
25's. I know it's not young anymore in terms of like he's
Like,
still
at that age, Michael
youngish.
Owen's career was basically finished.
Yeah, fair.
Like we have to kind of be realistic about this as well and kind of going, for the club, where is his uh, ceiling for value as well, for like market value, because we're seeing it now more often than not that unless you are a global superstar player, the likes of a Lewandowski or a Salah, like by the time you hit 30, your transfer value has already gone down. Like people want the the players that still have a potential. They're not always looking for that uh, completed player anymore. Just
I,
because
I think
the payoff is so much better off.
if we are to sell him, we need to make use of Arsenal and Liverpool's desperation for a goal scorer right now. And I think you're already seeing Arsenal make moves. You know, they put in 60 million bid for Ollie Watkins, and that's why I'm kind of holding strong on the 100 million. If Ollie Watkins is 60 million, Alexander Isak is 100 million.
Yeah, but English.
Yeah,
So there is always going to be that homegrown
English tax.
quota. So and like yeah, you have to have 8 players, and when like look at Liverpool, like there's not that many English players that they actually have as part of their main 25. Or those that are academy ones that do they have to sell because you're going to get the full money for them. Like if they sell Queven Kelleher, they will actually have usable money and they'll
Yeah.
get 30 million for him.
But they will never let him go because he's trapped in a dungeon somewhere under Anfield.
Well, it's better than Nakatomi Plaza.
Just
As a
before we
niche.
push off on the Isak thing, I think where my head is at with this is if we don't get Champions League this season, I see him going. If we do get Champions League this season, I see him going next year. So going back to your point, we need to fit if the club are of the same thinking as I am, which I have no reason to believe that they are. But if they were, they need to decide: will they get the money now when they've got 2 clubs in the Premier League itching for a striker, or are they going to wait, let those 2 clubs find a striker, then try sell him and potentially get less? Because he's never going to go to Saudi. We're not going to get that kind of.
Well, that's what I was going to say because like it's been agreed today as we record that John Duran apparently is going to go for a medical out in Saudi for was it 77,
Some
80 odd
it's
million.
north of 70 anyway. I know that.
Yeah, maybe 77 million euro.
Which
But
I don't know
like
about you. That just makes me sad. That transfer, like
yeah,
he has so much ability, and it's just going to be lost over there.
yeah. Although if you look at the Saudi league in general, like I'll put it to you this way: has the Saudi experiment gone wrong already? Like it's getting to China level of turnaround.
Well, it seems the problem they need to sort out, I suppose, from a PR perspective, is what's seemingly a very short span merry-go-round of players that, you've seen multiple players come and go, bought into the dream, either didn't like the situation from a football perspective, a family perspective, who knows, and exiting the league. I think that's their biggest issue. I think, don't get me wrong, from I've watched a couple of games and half games of the league. The quality is definitely getting better. It's not anything like they're saying where they're top 3 leagues in the world, but I think it is starting to get to that China level where it's just kind of a, why are they making the moves they're making and why are the players that are doing it going? It seems like Saudi are trying to rescue the situation, and there's players trying to cash in before that bubble really does burst and the money's gone.
Like we've seen it with uh, Henderson, obviously being probably the most high profile over here because how short that was.
Yeah.
And the fact he ended up going to Ajax, but like we're seeing more and more players, and maybe this is partly down to the clubs as well, trying to deal with their own registration rules over foreign-born players and all that kind of stuff. But like Neymar is on his way to Santos. I think Talisca has left. Maybe I think has he gone back to Brazil? Jota
Yeah.
left pretty quickly. Again,
Yeah.
there was question marks over registration there. He went to was it Stade Rennes, and now he's back at Celtic. Which
The Neymar one intrigues me because I don't know if he's doing that just for vibes or positive PR. And one other reason I'll mention in a second, but it's only a 6-month contract at Santos.
mhm.
And I think the reason behind that is I was listening to the Fozcast recently. They had a very interesting episode on the Saudi league, and I can't remember the player who was on, but basically he was saying when he decided to leave Saudi, his options were hamstrung from a tax perspective. He couldn't
Oh,
come
was
back
it
to he could
Andre Gray?
that was the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he couldn't come back to the UK, so he had to find a club somewhere in Europe, or sorry, somewhere in Europe or somewhere else in the rest of the world. And I do wonder, is that what Neymar's doing, where he's leaving Saudi? He's apparently foregoing the 60 million left on his contract and leaving. So I think like his optics of exiting look good, his optics of going back to Brazil look good, but is this a tax move?
Potentially, but also with Neymar, he's you're not signing him for football anymore. You're signing him as a celebrity signing. Like, there's a reason why PSG got David Beckham in when he was 41 on loan.
Yeah,
Like,
arguably, Beckham had more to add to that PSG team though than Neymar does right now to Santos.
yeah, but don't forget, homegrown. That is his club. He was the new Pele, and he was probably the last real Santos player anointed by Pele as his successor. So there's going to be that kind of deification around him there, and if that's where he finishes his career, then great. But it is that kind of stage, like we saw with Ronaldinho as well. Like, he's ever diminishing returns, but flashes of genius. So I think that's probably a move that suits all parties. Um,
Financially, how are Santos doing it though? That's my only thing. You know, where the hell are they affording that wage?
There's more money in the Brazilian league than you think.
Well, I suppose all the big dogs.
Less regulation.
It seems like if you're a high profile Brazilian player, 9 out of 10 of them end up going back at some point before they finish. So you have to be right then from a financial perspective, because like your Marcelos and that kind of caliber of player all seem to go back.
Plus, there's always that kind of thing as well, where maybe the club isn't fronting the whole thing, because you're allowed to have multiple ownership from agents and businesses.
Was this the kind of Tevez situation?
Exactly. Yeah. So he could be returning there on a small wage, but retaining his image rights. And you imagine Neymar's value to advertisers over there, like it's beyond belief. And if he's pocketing 90% of that, whereas before he was only getting 10%, well, then that's a massive coup for himself. And I'm sure culturally and nightlife wise, it probably suits him to be leaving there now. But he's not the only player that's going from there, and I don't think the Saudi experiment is done yet.
I think it's far from done, but they're having issues. They need to course correct very fast.
Yeah, because like people joked about the MLS being a retirement league, but it was consistent.
Yeah,
like
good point.
People knew, like, oh, you're going over there, and slowly but surely the level got better. Like, it went from having a long forgotten Abel Xavier playing for LA Galaxy as David Beckham came in to at one stage, as has been going around on social media, having Lampard, Pirlo, and David Villa playing in one team. Like, and
Saudi can only hope to be in the position the MLS is. Like the MLS is in
the standard of football wise, I'd say Saudi can probably reach the MLS there, but what the MLS has done is so much more sustainable long term.
100%.
Like, they've created a culture. Now we as goes viral every 6 months, there's a few bits of it are a little bit more manufactured than most football fans would want.
There's always going to be in the American market, but like that market needs to be studied of how they executed that. And they've done it to perfection. And I know they have the likes of Messi, and I know they've, like, Beckham really was the one. I don't mean from a club owner perspective. Him coming into the league gave them enough cash in the bank. He brought all the big dogs with him. But what he's done, taking out what he's done with Inter Miami and take out the Messi experiment, it was still in an incredible place.
So, like, I would nearly argue the Messi thing has just distracted people. It's making it look like a blip, which is going to put a bit more of a stigma around it than it actually deserves. Like, when you see, like, even look at Miguel Almiron coming from Atlanta.
Yeah.
This is a level that, like, if not Premier League, but definitely upper championship teams are poaching these players. Whereas I think some people may still associate it with a slightly lower level than that. Um, yeah, like I think one of the things you should actually look up as well is David Bruce. He was one of the executives in the MLS who's now at Sunderland.
I was about to say, I think I
Yeah.
remember us talking about this before. Yeah, I
Uh,
remember. I remember you guys poaching him, and that was like a big coup.
yeah, he was kind of one of the ones that kind of got into a big position around the time that New York City FC and LAFC came in.
Yes. Okay.
So it was in around that time. So that kind of the growth time.
Yeah.
But even when you look at like LAFC, it was one of them kind of things that they're only a fine club now, but like Will Ferrell is a co-owner, and like they've done all these little bits that the Premier League do, but they've done it in like they've either done it before the Premier League or they do it in a slightly lesser way.
They've branded it better. You know, like they've
Yeah,
they've they've had their welcome to Wrexham in multiple teams. You know, you've got Matthew McConaughey at at Austin. You've got Will Ferrell in LA. You've got Beckham, obviously. Like, I mean, there's enough star power in these
they
teams.
have, and they've done it time and time again. They have a much better selling of the story than the Saudi league has done,
100%.
and I think it's one of the things that players go in and seeing the money, and I think it was touched on the Fozcast as well that like the money being touted is not what they're
Yeah,
getting over in Saudi.
it's still
But
ungodly amounts of money, but like
it's basically that what is being quoted in the press is what you would need to earn in the UK to earn the same amount.
yeah,
It's like, because you're not getting taxed on it. Oh, you're getting 500,000 a week. No, you're not getting 500,000 a week. But if you were to be getting 500,000 a week in the UK after taxes, what you'd be earning is X, and X is what you're just getting straight into your pocket in Saudi.
yeah.
And I think that's a major underrated part of this as well. Is like they, as you mentioned before with Neymar, and Andre Gray, the tax season and that kind of stuff, and that would be playing a part for players, or at least their management and their agents. But with the likes of John Duran going out and at that age, do you think that we could be seeing another influx of big signings to them? Because we've mentioned it very recently that they had gone quiet for a
Yeah,
good while,
yeah.
but this is a very different profile of player. Like, we saw them going young with the likes of Jota, um, player doing well.
They've gone even younger in the last couple of days. You know, I saw two La Masia graduates are headed out to Saudi, 18 and 20. You know, like they're starting to
That's
like. I don't know if they're trying to
that's
box smart. You know,
it's a little bit different when like their potential payoff, like what your outlay is for your potential. Whereas this is they're spending proven money on a young player who realistically most of the big Champions League clubs would buy if they were given the option. Do you think that this is going to attract a different level of player? Because don't forget their window closes after the January one does, and
I th-
then
I
into the
think
summer.
I think what the Saudis will need to happen for more players of his caliber to keep coming is him to stay. So if they can get another two of him in this window, keep them for like 2 years, then I think people will go. If people can see there's some level of longevity, and that's like 2 years isn't exactly forever, but like, you know, in Saudi league times, that's a long, long time. So I think if they can get players who are committing to the project, even if they're there for sheer money reasons, more will follow.
Do you think the Saudi League could have the likes of an Oscar that he was to the Chinese Super League? That you'll have a player that was fantastic, young, went out for the money, but he stayed there for nigh on 8 years.
I think that actually went against them because although he was an incredible servant to that league, and it sounds ironic calling him that when he made more money from football than I think anyone ever will, arguably, but I think he became irrelevant. People forgot who he was. Younger kids coming up didn't know who he was, so it
In the
didn't.
UK.
But that's that. Like
But
if the UK market aren't buying in, they're most likely of players from a volume perspective.
Not necessarily. Like South America, I think is like I think we underestimate here in the West non-Western markets like Asia, as we've touched on before with many of our interviews with Richard Harkus and Charlie Pomeroy and even Johnny McKinstry with Africa. Like these are emerging markets that are so underrated, and I think especially when you see some of the players that got nationalized for the Chinese league. Was it Elkson, the striker, and I think they had another Brazilian attacking midfielder that like I don't think they're trying to get you or me. I think they're trying to get an audience that's a lot more open. That to like
Well,
we've seen it.
football in those parts of the world, it's not a sport; it's a religion. You know, and we've seen that from all the interviews that you mentioned there, and even from other interviews where we've talked about playing experiences in those countries. Like it truly it transcends sport. So I totally get that, and if you can
And they're
get
a lot more willing to follow individual players.
yeah, and I think you're right on that. Where they may get volume of players from the UK, but they will not get buy-in like they will from other parts of the world.
So that's what I mean with Oscar. Like, could we end up it's very telling as well that John Duran is Colombian and he's going out
Yeah,
there with that money. Like, could we see a little kind of pivot because like the Saudi league has become basically a joke. And we're also seeing in the European market, looks like the likes of Liga struggling to sell its TV rights.
yeah.
We are a market that is I don't want to say flooded because obviously you can always have more. There should always be an audience, but there doesn't seem to be the diversity of interest that allow these smaller leagues in. And are they just going to pivot to box clever?
One thing that I think they have done well is obviously securing Ronaldo was the keys to the palace, but they don't rely on him too much. He's just Ronaldo and is doing Ronaldo things. You know, it's as in yes, he's in the press stuff for everything, and he's ringside at Riyadh season and all of that. But it it's I'd argue that the MLS are more dependent on Messi than the Saudi league are dependent on Ronaldo.
Oh, I don't know if I agree there. I think what's the thing with Messi is that the for want of a better word, the mainstream American media has taken an interest, and we are so
Consumed by it.
flooded. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are flooded in by that, and our social medias, majority of them are American owned, and I think we're just seeing a different side and a different interest in football than we're used to because of this newfound interest. And
So you're saying if Saudi was the States, it'd be the same, basically.
yeah, like I think they're doing it like they're equivalent, and like I think when you have like such a capitalistic society as the American is, not to be getting political or anything, but like we're hearing about this messy tax on games. We're not hearing about that over in Saudi, but that could be happening.
Yeah.
Like we don't know, probably not, but we don't know, because it's just not as like we're not made aware of it. So I think that's kind of slightly overstated, and like football doesn't live or die in Miami. Like they've still expanding teams, and I think ultimately it'll be good for the MLS to have this extra interest. But like another thing that's good for leagues is when the underdogs are doing well. And I have to say, despite the result, and it was a fantastic game, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth 5, Nottingham Forest 0. It was great just to see these two fun teams go against each other.
Well, it's just what you want to see as a football fan. You know, I think we've been incredibly lucky this year to see that. I mean, whether they win anything or don't, it doesn't matter. Like it's not a Leicester situation where it all hinges on that. Like I think it's also unearthed new playing styles. I think it's unearthed coaches that should have had more respect on their names for a longer period of time. Especially within Bournemouth, with Forest Santos, or Nuno Espirito Santos is beloved around the world for certain clubs he's been at, but I think it definitely shines more for Iraola.
Iriola, who I must also add, I think was part of that New York City FC side that featured Lampard and Pirlo
Was
and
he?
David Villa. Yeah,
I
he ended
didn't
his
know
career
that.
there. Yeah, and
So he's
he
another
was
city plant, is what you're telling us.
well, no, he was at Athletic Bilbao before that for like majority of his career. So he's Basque and he comes
Yeah.
from that
Okay.
kind of school of football.
He's a good egg. So
He's a good egg. He just finished over in America with the wrong side of New York. Although the other side of New York is Red Bulls, so it's like,
yeah, yeah.
but like it's one of them kind of guys that like was undervalued in the Premier League, despite the fact he'd done well at Rayo Vallecano. And it was just a gap that Bournemouth has spotted, and he's there nearly 2 years. He had a wobbly start, but like do you know who he really, really, really reminds me of? Just the whole situation is
If you say,
Pochettino.
oh, I thought you were about to say Potter, and I was like, I swear to God.
We'll come on to him later.
No,
No, Pochettino. Very little English at the start. Fun style of play that wasn't quite working. Was
players buy into him. They'd run through a
given
wall.
the time,
Yeah,
and now look, and
that's a great shout, actually.
like it's just it's really good to see. No matter where they finish this year, I don't care if between now and the end of the season they don't win a game. They've proven a point, and the same with Forest. Like Forest are still top four.
But
Like
but
it's
it all
insane.
but both the Premier League needed this in terms of, we talked, I think, previously this season, or if not last season, about how the league was getting a bit stale, and this is everything you need. This is like, an FA Cup run on steroids. Like it shows any team in the league that they are able to do this, and it's not some field of dreams kind of thing. It's well orchestrated, well planned systems.
Although I don't want to wax too lyrical about the situation as well. Like I have issues with Forest. It's great to see them doing well.
More
Like
Bournemouth when I say that now, but
yeah,
Forest
because
went out and splurged all the
this
money.
they spent all the money, but in the not to be kind of flip flopping here. They saw the rules. They went at the rules. They took their licks and they they played the game. They're like, right, listen, we're solid this year. We're not going to go down. If we get the financial implications and the points deduction, we'll take it now. And they still have majority of the players that they spend all that money on and are able to build on from that. So, like, is this something for Newcastle to learn? Take your lickings now.
Well, one player that is performing very well is a player that we did try to sign, and that's Alanga. So I wonder, will we go down that route again? I think he'll command a far higher fee than we can probably afford right now, because, like we said back to the start, we're so hamstrung on who we can bring in. It's dismal. But yeah, no, they
Does he
definitely.
have a developed UK development slot
I think so.
from his time at United?
I think
Like
so. I'm
that's a
not
player.
100%, but I think he does.
Yeah, like if he doesn't, he's pretty close. But he's a player that United could do it right now. Like I saw a post recently that like a lot of the players that they've let go and there was kind of complaints about have done very, very well. Do you think Amarin is going like? I think this season's a write off. Do you think he's going to get the backing that he needs come the summer?
Financially,
Not even about spending massive money, but to be able to reinvest if they do sell, to be able to make signings when he needs to.
I think he was brought in to play a certain system. I think he wouldn't have come in if he didn't have assurances that he's allowed to bring in players that fit that system. I think in order to do what I think this year he's just getting through, doing what he can, and trying to, square a peg round hole his system with the players that he has. I think there'll be a bit of a. Do you remember every couple of years Fergie would have a big Deadwood clear out, and it'd
Yeah.
be cutthroat, and fan favorites would go, Young
Yeah,
players might go like you could dime a dozen these players. I think there's going to be that situation, or at least there has to be that. But and I think it's yin and yang in that way, that he's going to have to do that to get the financial means to buy in who he wants to, because I don't see the club giving him massive amount of money. I think they'll give him the opportunity to bring in the players that he wants if he can find the money to do it. What are you thinking?
I think Man United are going to be this summer and for the next 2 or 3 years. Do you remember for years Wenger always had that kind of thing over his head? Oh, we can't spend because of the new stadium.
Yeah.
And there was, I think that's going to be it. Like, I know they're getting government backing now for the Old Trafford redevelopment, but I think Ratcliffe is just hammering on about this cost cutting. Oh, we're spending too much, spending too much. And I think that's going to trickle down. And I think it's
Well, he's
going to
already trying to
really.
put tickets up again. He's cutting the wages of ambassadors. He's taken away charitable donations. It's there comes a point where you're just being Scrooge McDuck, and if he doesn't have he's very quickly going to need to show what the club are getting out of these restructures.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if he doesn't spend money, well, then people are going to start going, whoa, 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 whoa.
Where's it
Where,
going?
yeah, like you're just making money off of this,
Yeah.
and rightly or wrongly, like it's a business at the end of the day, and he can run it however he wants. But when you're coming promising positivity after an ownership that was not positive, you kind of need to prove a point, and he's done quite the opposite. But I think that it's going to be that kind of thing, which I don't. Sometimes necessity is the mother of all invention, and sometimes some clubs are better off having less money, like, because it makes you box clever. But when you have the Man United tax of you're going to have to pay 30, 40, 50% more because of who you are,
In
you
both
can't
in both transfer
necessarily,
prices and wages.
yeah, you can't necessarily afford to do that. And they're at a stage that they can't afford not to just do something like they have a lot of dead wood. They need to get better at that, getting rid of them players, because that's something that they gotten quite bad at. Like, look at Martial being there for as long as he was. But they need a serious amount of restructuring in the team. Like, they have a lot of players that don't fit the system or don't fit the mentality, more importantly now, and I think that's going to be a key thing this summer.
Well,
Like,
when you see the comments from Amorim saying he'd rather play a 63-year-old goalkeeping coach instead of arguably one of his best players on paper, I think that sets the tone. You know.
yeah, and then when, like, the likes of Rashford and stuff, like, he said he wants to go, and we're at the end of the month, and there's no move
I,
coming, and
I
Walker's gone to Milan, so that move is gone.
I think it's a case of, as much as Walker said, there's only so many clubs you leave Manchester City for. Look, I think he would have gone a couple of places. It seems like Rashford is sticking his feet in. He wants Juventus or he wants Barcelona. Barcelona are in. If you think Newcastle are tied up in knots from a financial point of view, head over to Barcelona. They are going to need to shift 2-3 players to get in a player of Rashford's caliber. And
They have to shift it 2 or 3 players to get a player that they've been playing for the first
yeah,
half of the season. They got special dispensation for Olmo.
like the question with Amarim is, I like him. Before I go into the question, my vibe on him is I like him. I think he can succeed there if he's given the tools to do so. I think yes, people are giving him shit, saying that he's a clickbait merchant in terms of his sound bites, but I think he's just setting the tone and setting it early. And where my query is with Rashford, if Rashford stays past this window, which is looking likely, and he will be gone in the summer at that point, but for the rest of the season, does this become a Sancho situation where it'll be a media storm? If because he's not going to play him. Let's be real.
Well, he may be forced to if he doesn't get the move. Like, it does come to a stage where you have to do what is best for the team, and sometimes that's just filling the numbers.
But does
Which
that just pull the rug on his whole "I'm the big man, you don't mess with me"?
I know. I think what Amarin has kind of realized, and I think why he's getting soundbitey, is the best thing he can do right now is buy political capital with the fans. and he's saying the right things, and I think that's what he's doing. I think he's just going, listen, stick with me. Forget the players, forget the ownership.
It's dangerous
Just
if
trust.
there's only so much cash in the bank you can get with that. You know, like as in, like yeah, this season's a gimme. Like it just is. But like, how soon
w-
into say he gets he's got another 4 months of getting the fans on his side, plus a potential good window. But like, how long
What
into
other
next
card does he
year?
have?
But
What other card does he have?
but
Because
I'd buy
he's
into
not
it
going
if
to
I.
get. He's not going to get the money. The only thing he can do is say the right things right now because he doesn't have the players to play the system that he wants. He's getting the odd good result that kind of keeps things ticking over. He doesn't have the legendary status of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He doesn't even have the mediocre cups that Ten Hag won. He has very little legs to stand on to kind of keep people buying into.
If he gets people to buy in though, how long do you think he has next season before say he gets the Deadwood out, he gets a couple of players in that he wants, and it's still not working? How long do you think he's got?
If they are playing decent and get enough reasonable results, not talking like like winning streaks here, but a couple of decent results again. Like if he gets a draw, if he beats City early on and a Liverpool, he gets the season.
If it's this time next,
I think he gets the full season. I
if
think
it's
he'll get
this
at
time
least
next
18
year
months.
and they're eighth,
As long as they're like, if they have a team that is starting to play in a way that is akin to tactically reasonable, I think he'll still have the buy-in.
I can't believe how far United have fallen. They've gone from how many Premier Leagues to a team that is tactically capable. Like, like, like for the love of God.
um, Speaking of buying in, a guy that we bought in on, and it's all starting to kind of go a little bit sour, is Big Ange. Does
It's
he make the end of the year?
I
End of the
hope so.
season?
I hope so. I don't think so. But I do hope so. Look, I think it's an interesting kind of comparison there with Amorim and Ange. Both have their styles of football that they like playing. Both have a personality that is kind of buy into me, and it's just not working for Ange. And I think we saw this with Vincent Company, where if you have a style of play and you don't deviate from it, yes, Spurs have had a hideous amount of injuries. But at the end of the day, you've got to play with the players you have, and he's not adapting. And they're probably the most exciting team to watch in the Premier League at the moment if you're a neutral. But if you're a Spurs fan, it is a living nightmare. So I
I
think
think
his
he's not helping himself though. I really think that he, with his press conferences, like we love his bluntness. What did we say when he joined? The normal one has arrived. We had the special one. The normal one has arrived.
I
But
forgot about that. Yeah.
I think where he's kind of going wrong is, did he have a quote recently basically saying, "Are we not entertaining you?"
See, that's what I
That's
mean.
going to turn the fans against you. I
You're
don't
trying to be
think he
too soccer
deserves to go.
AM. You're trying to be too Tim Lovejoy with that vibe. You know.
It sounds like literally a scene in Ted Lasso. Like he
It
goes,
really does. Yeah.
I just love coaching. I don't care about results. It's a results business.
Like personally, I don't see him there at the end of the season. Levy is a bit ruthless when he comes to these things, and I think the jig is up. I don't know about you.
I
I don't want it to be. I think I speak for the pod when I say we're fans of him and
yeah,
we're team Ange.
I could see him go by the end of the year, by the end of the season. Uh, I think it'll be more of a fan decision than even Levy. I think Levy will see it as, this is going to start affecting our ticket sales, and that'll kind of force it that the fans have lost confidence. And like when you see him, did you see that clip of him trying to shout at a fan? Like he was going down the tunnel and he literally came back to shout. Who said that? It's like, ah.
I do think part of it is he's under an incredible amount of pressure, and I think he knows he's on the ropes, and I don't think he's reacting well to it. But I've encountered far too many Spurs fans in my life of late, but all of them have been saying the same thing of who is out there to replace him with.
To be honest, that could be the reason why he's not gone yet.
And that is very possible because look, unless you've got some Brighton algorithm out there, there's no one that really is jumping to mind that would want to take on that challenge. Because look, I know we've covered this to death before, and apologies for listeners for going down this road again. But like, at what point are we going to admit that it's either a Levy issue or a squad issue? They have had how many managers at this point? Poch, unbelievable manager now at the US. Conte's doing his thing. Mourinho's doing his thing, albeit in not as high profile a league. But I think, are they second? Like Mourinho's lot, I think they're second.
Mm.
Like, at what point do we go? Ange is a very capable manager. Like, yes, it's not working, but he'll always say, "Oh, if I had a full strength team, it could have been different." But they need to look inward. Kane leaving hasn't really affected them that much. They're still the same old Spurs, like.
Well, other than their position in the league, but I think
But I mean, from a
15th.
playing perspective, like
Yeah.
they haven't changed.
Like I think when you see how, no, not saying that like Nuno didn't, he wasn't great straight after leaving Tottenham either, but like Nuno left and like it was,
Every
as
manager
you
that's been a
say,
failure has shown again the reason they got the job, and
yeah.
since why they've gone on to put their current teams in top positions.
And like there is managers, like say even without even going to like trying to take one from clubs, there's managers out there that are reasonable options for them. Just having a look here, like if they want to go back down the Vilas Boas style of route of,
He was another one that really could have worked out if he was given time. I stand
yeah,
by that.
well, he's now a director, I think, at Porto again. I think he's back there after he did the Dakar rally. He went into like, off-road rallying, but like, did it go for a Ten Hag? If they want to go down that kind of route, Xavi is available. I don't think they'd get him.
Xavi be too much of a. He's never played. He's never been around this league before. I think it's too much of a risk. Ten Hag, I think there'd be riots.
Paolo Fonseca,
That could
let
work.
go from Milan. Go a little bit clever. Terzic, the guy that was at Dortmund.
Yeah, I mean
Try something a little bit different.
yeah, that could work. Again, though, see, I don't know what Spurs need. It like
Do they take a gamble and go for the likes of a Steve Cooper that like
see
has shown
that
he
could
can
completely
do
work.
well? Yeah, like when you kind of take completely aside egos, like dude, it in the way that a Potter is, do you kind
Ding
of get a
ding ding! We have our Potter mention.
do you kind of just get a guy that is a good bloke, kind of like Ange's, but Ange, as we've said, it has that kind of buy-in mentality, whereas Steve Cooper is he's a real head coach. He's a coach rather than a manager. Like I was seeing on the Amazon documentary with Spurs that like Mourinho having that kind of iron fist kind of didn't go that well, and I think it's always a factor. Like when you are a bigger club in London, it's a
There's more expectation. There's more
not even that.
sparkle
Just
to it.
just there's more egos.
Yeah.
Like you're big fish in a big city kind of thing.
See, that's where your Steve Coopers just won't work.
Well,
From a
I
football,
don't know.
from a sheer football perspective, it could work. From a big, massive London club, I
Well,
don't know if that works.
the Iron Fist hasn't worked. So to
Nothing's
be
worked. Let's just put it like nothing's
but
worked.
they haven't really tried the likes of a Steve Cooper. Like the closest thing they did was either Ange or Nuno. So like,
Yeah.
and neither of them are that. So I think it'd be worth a gamble. Like especially if you sack Ange before the end of the year, I'd get him in. Because other than that, what did you do? Did you try and get an interim manager in, somebody that was good at the club? Did you get Harry Redknapp in till the end of the season? Like it becomes
What's his
parody
face?
then.
What's his face? Who was the interim? Has done it like twice now. Ryan.
Ryan Mason.
Yeah, it's just going to be him. If they get rid
Yeah.
of him before the end of the year, it's going to be him for a couple of
Get
months.
Gus Hiddink. Did it at Chelsea. Some lad. Or Juan de Ramos. Is he still around?
Jesus Christ, we're really going in the archives of
Wasn't he the one that won the Carling Cup with them?
yeah, he was.
Yeah, I don't know. I there's something broken there, and I don't know how to fix it. And I don't know if getting rid of Ange is the fix, but it seems like it's going to be the most likely outcome.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I agree. I don't think it's the fix. I think there's more going on in the club, but writing's on the wall for me, unfortunately. Ange can become the resident pundit, even if he wants to be on this pod.
No, that's Alan Cawley. He's our pundit. Ange can be our Australia correspondent.
We'd never do that, DL. Don't worry.
But the writing is on the wall for this episode as well. So thanks very much for this kind of later than usual episode. It may happen again. Who knows? We could try and keep you on your toes. Connor, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Messi.